Welcome to Public Health Matters, where we speak about matters in public health. My name is Jane Goodman, Public Health Strategist with the Division of Public Health and Community Services. I'm joined today by Dave Perault from the Nashua Fire Department as a fire marshal, who's going to talk to us about fire safety today. However, I would like to start with a COVID update just to top the hour. And globally, we have 177.5 million cases with 3.84 million deaths. In the US, we have 33.5 million cumulative cases. And unfortunately, we've reached a milestone of 604,000 cumulative deaths. In Nashua, we have some really great news. If you look at the graphic, we finally have some green, and we have the bottom word, minimal transmission. So you can see new infections per 100,000 are 46.8. When we get below 50, we consider transmission minimal in the area. So this is great news for us. This just came out this morning on the state's dashboard. And our 7-day total test positivity rate is 1.5% in the city. Moving on to the next graph, you can see again a steep decline in COVID cases reported. This is great news. Again, the far right is a big downhill slope. We just want to emphasize that we're still not completely out of the COVID-19 pandemic. We are seeing great numbers. We are seeing much healthier statistics for our city, but we still want to remind people to take personal responsibility during this time. And that means staying home if you're sick, except to seek medical attention, to still wear that mask if you're in crowded places, in stores, restaurants. It is still preferred that you keep that mask on. Avoid poorly ventilated indoor areas, and keep a distance of 6 feet from those not in your family or those that are not vaccinated. Wash your hands often, a good 20 seconds under warm water, and get vaccinated against COVID-19. Our next graph shows that the COVID-19 vaccine rate in New Hampshire is going up steadily. We still have a ways to go. We're at about 53% of the total population of New Hampshire being vaccinated. We have another 48% who have had their first dose. So we hope those two lines will meet very soon, and we will have closed the gap. So we want to remind people that if you've had your first dose, please make sure you're having that second dose as well, and that you have that scheduled. We just also want to remind you with this next graphic that vaccines work. Protect yourself and your loved ones. Get vaccinated against COVID-19. The vaccines are really readily available now everywhere you go. Walgreens, Rite Aid, all pharmacies, and some individual doctors' offices are starting to have them. Community health centers. The Division of Public Health also has vaccine available. We've been doing a lot of clinics in the community. If your organization would like to set up a private clinic, we can do that. Just call the division. You can also go online to make your appointment, vaccines.nh.gov. And so now, taking a much welcome breather from COVID-19, I also want to point out that we are maskless today. This is the first time in a really long time that we felt comfortable doing that. Everyone in studio is vaccinated. I'm here with Dave Perault, from the Assistant Superintendent from the Fire Marshal's office. Welcome, Dave.
Thank you.
Dave's come here to talk to us about fire safety and summer safety in general. There's a lot going on in the summer. We want to remind folks as we enter these warmer temperatures that there's a lot of things that they need to pay attention to. First and foremost, can you just tell me what the role of the fire marshal is and what you do in your office so that people have an understanding?
The three of us in the fire marshal's office, we are tasked with conducting inspections on construction, modifications. We do inspections for place of assembly permits for bars and restaurants and public gathering areas. We investigate complaints that we get through the fire department for various items, fire safety or arson investigations. And by state statute, we're required as a fire department to investigate every fire to determine if it was arson or not. And in our city, we do our own investigations unless we need help from the state. So we are very busy
Yes.
all week long.
Yes, and I know that you worked with public health recently because there was a fire last week that I know our
Yes.
environmental health department was involved in as well.
So there are times when we do work together with you people at public health, environmental health. Anytime there's a incident or a fire that involves a restaurant or a kitchen area where there's food preparation, we work hand in hand with you guys to be sure all the stuff is mitigated that needs to be cleaned up to keep everything safe.
Yeah, and so you mentioned restaurant inspections and that kind of thing in other place of business and construction. So are you looking for a fire evacuation plan, or are you looking for wiring? What kind of things do you do in your inspection?
It depends what work is being conducted for the inspections for the building. If they're modifying the fire alarm system or they're modifying the sprinkler system, if they're building walls or partitions, where they're changing egress paths, all that has to be verified that it's done by code, and also that all the exit lighting and fire extinguishers are in place for all the safety items.
So before the show, we were talking that you recently inspected our new building, so I'll give a plug that Public Health is moving back to 18 Mulberry Street, and we're thrilled. We'll be actually back in there in a few days, and quite a big renovation, so I thank you for making sure that we'll be safe when we move back into the building, because we did make quite a few changes.
It was a complete renovation,
Yeah.
yes.
When you say walls, I'm like, yeah, there were walls. I walked in to get a pre-tour during the construction, and I didn't know where I was because it changed so much. So I really had to reorient myself to the front of the building, the back of the building, and find my office and all of that. So it looks good.
Yep.
So summer's here. A lot of things to talk about. I think maybe we'll start with extreme heat and things to look out for in extreme heat with animals, kids, and those kind of things.
Yeah, we just like to remind people that with the extreme heat, you want to make sure you stay hydrated. Try and stay in the shade if you can. Remember about the pets in the vehicles. Even with a window cracked in a vehicle, the interior temperature could get upwards of 130, 140 degrees. And it may seem like it's fine, but even with the windows cracked, not enough cool air is getting into that vehicle.
Yeah, the air's very still.
Yeah, and the pets are suffering.
And that goes with kids. I mean,
And the
I
same
like
with
to think
children.
we don't have to say that,
It's
but
less,
we do.
It's less common with children in the car, but it can happen.
Yeah, so we want to just make sure that either probably not leaving them in the car at all at this point. It's getting pretty toasty out there right now. And then what other things? You said stay hydrated, keep a water bottle around for people just in general. They want to pay attention. Are there signs and symptoms to look for if you're getting overheated?
If you're getting overheated, I mean, excessive sweating, not being able to catch your breath. If you go too far, you end up where you actually stop sweating, and then that gets dangerously leading to heat stroke. So you definitely need to get cooled down or call for help and have somebody help you.
And so what are some things, so if you're calling for help, what are some of the things to look for? You said you stop sweating. Anything else for heat stroke that people should be looking for?
A lot of people have changes in vision. You start getting nearsighted or can't really focus on things.
Blurred vision.
Yeah, confusion.
Okay. So just things for people to really look out for. Especially, we've already had some pretty toasty days in Nashua and in the surrounding areas. So we really want people to be aware of that. So I was looking up a lot of things because there are so many more issues than you'd actually think about. So grill safety. When it's out, it's easier to cook outside, keeps the house cool, but there's a lot of things people need to remember.
Yes. With your grill safety, I'm at fault myself. When you
don't tell
buy
us
a
that.
grill, you typically don't read all the instructions and what you're supposed to do and have the correct clearances. It's all in the manuals when you have your new grill that you buy. And the manufacturers have those distances in there because they've been tested. And you need to pay attention to make sure you're not cooking under overhangs, inside garages, definitely not inside the building.
Okay.
It creates lots of carbon monoxide that you can't readily get out of a building. And you never know when you're going to have a flare-up from some old grease inside. So yeah, if you pull it inside the garage when it's raining out and you have a flare-up, and you won't be able to put it out before the garage gets going on fire. So
Okay, so we want to stay outside. And
stay outside. In Nashua, in the state, we have an ordinance that states you cannot, on a multifamily building, which is 3 units or more, you cannot have a grill on a porch.
Okay.
It has to be outside on the ground. The only thing that the statute allows is electric cooking devices, if it's correctly corded and there's an outlet outside.
Okay.
But there's no grills allowed on decks or porches for multifamily buildings.
Because if there is a fire, you're endangering really the whole
And
building.
typically those buildings that are multifamilies like that don't have a way off the porch.
Oh, okay.
So the grill is confined to the railing that is on the porch. So you're in a confined space.
No fire escape.
No fire escape from the porch, you're correct.
I seem to remember that being when I first moved to the area, and I was in a condo, and we had a little deck, and we had our little hibachi, and we were told that we weren't allowed to do
Yes,
that.
you're not allowed.
Now I know why, 25 years later. That's good. And so I see things like at least 3 feet from the house. Is that?
We say
little?
10 feet, 10
You say
feet from
10
a
feet.
structure, yep.
Okay, so 10 feet. And then not to leave it unattended. Is that, just something?
Obviously, yes, you don't want to burn your food either, but.
See, now you say obviously, but how often do we all go in our house and the grill's out there?
Yep, and you
going
look out
on?
the
I'm
window and
guilty
see
of
the
that.
smoke rising and go out there to turn the burger over, correct? Yep.
Right. So, and then I thought this was a good tip, to place the coals from your grill in a metal can or a lid once it's cooled. Just something, if you are going to change them out.
Yes, if you're using charcoal, you always want to put the coals in a metal container, not in a plastic bucket or anything that can melt down or catch fire.
Or catch fire. Don't put them in a paper bag.
They stay hot for a long time.
Yeah, and they can reignite if there's a wind or, that kind of thing. Or
That's also a good idea if you have an outdoor campfire pit, which require permits in Nashua also, to not put the coals or the ashes from that in anything other than a metal container.
Okay, so that's important to have nearby.
They'll stay hot for days in the container.
Okay, so we want to do that. And then that you reminded me, charcoal, there's also gas grills. So you want to open it before you light it.
Yep.
You don't want the poof.
And every time you change the tank, you're supposed to check for leaks with soapy water on all the
How do
connections.
you do that?
You just put some dishwashing soap and some water in a spray bottle and spray all the lines and connections. And if there's any leaks, it'll blow bubbles.
Oh, I'm going to
foams
do
up.
that, because
Yep.
we do have ours connected to the propane, and
Yep.
I never think to do that.
It's in the manual.
It's in the manual, which I didn't read clearly.
Yep, it's in the manual.
Or maybe my husband didn't read because he had to put the grill together.
Yep.
That's not my job. So, all right. So, and then moving to smoking and fires, just a little bit, in public health, we always talk smoking's not good for you in general. So we obviously discourage that. But people do smoke, and we just want to talk about, especially when it's dry, discarding those cigarettes. And there's also safety about going to sleep, smoking in bed. Maybe you could just give us a little rundown on that.
Yeah, so with smoking, so far this year, we've had hundreds of calls for bark mulch fires.
Oh.
So people that smoke in their car, I realize they don't want to put it in their ashtray, or if the car even has an ashtray anymore. So they toss them out the window. And a cigarette can only cause fires with certain items. It doesn't have a lot of energy in a cigarette ash, but being outdoors in a light breeze and landing in bark mulch, which is basically shaved wood.
Yeah, that's drying out in the heat.
It's very
Yeah.
dry in the sun. It very easily creates bark mulch fires and grass fires along the side of the highway.
Wow, I never even thought of that. I'm thinking of like the woods behind my house, and You're right. I mean, there's so much bark mulch around, and
It is all these shopping centers and so forth around the city that have the nice bark mulch islands. We go, like I said, there's hundreds of calls for bark mulch fires in those islands just because people toss a cigarette butt out there.
so we want to remind people to be considerate. Do not toss them out the window, especially near the bark mulch, because it will cause a fire. And it's interesting because there always seems to be, as hot as it gets, there always seems to be a light breeze, which
It's just
fans the flames
just
of
a
that
little bit of a
cigarette.
breeze. Smoking at home, obviously smoking in bed is dangerous. Smoking with medical oxygen is very dangerous.
Extremely, yeah.
Extremely dangerous. We're seeing a lot of fires now with people preferring not to smoke in the house or being told they can't smoke in the house. They'll smoke on their porch or their balcony, which creates the same thing
Where
as
the
the bark
grill
mulch.
is.
Where the grill is.
Yeah.
You have that light breeze on the porch, and the cigarette, even if you keep a small bucket of ashes with the filters in there, with the light breeze, it creates fires, especially in planters and pots that have the peat moss soil.
Okay.
And we see a lot of fires now, and it's been well documented from NFPA nationwide that fires are becoming more prevalent on balconies and porches because of that. People don't prefer to smoke in their house and smell up the house, so they smoke on the balcony or porch. And they have a pot that they throw all the butts in, and it ends up catching fire.
So is there something that we can advise people? Maybe just keep a can out there with some water in it. Just make sure. I mean, if you're
Definitely,
we don't want you to
yeah.
do it, but if you're going to, at least do it safely and keep some water out there, so that those cigarettes are completely out and that you're not throwing them
They
down
really
in the
need
grass.
to be quenched in water to
Yeah.
make sure they're out.
So there's my fire prevention safety tip. Take a can, fill it, and just use that, and then discard them all at once.
And you
when
got to
you're-
pay attention. I mean, it's hot out, so the water dries up, so you have to make sure you have enough water in there all the time.
Yeah, good point. So, we've covered smoking. I also think of people like, it is dry. Now, before this, we did talk about it not being as dry as it could be in Nashua. What is our rating right now for the dryness, you said?
We're right on the edge of the minor drought. The northern part of the state is starting to get into the drought situation. But Massachusetts and very southern Nashua is right on the line. So all it's going to take is another one of those 90-degree weeks that we had a few weeks ago, and we will be beginning to head back into that drought
The way we were last
the
summer.
way we were. Yep.
Yeah, and so when things get really dry, the forests are, the woods, the parks, we've got beautiful parks in Nashua, Mines Falls and those kind of things, so we just want people to be mindful that they're dry, again, not to throw their cigarettes into those, discard it over there.
Yep,
Doing
brush
fire.
fires, when they start, are very hard to extinguish. Just the layer of peat and disintegrating materials, leaves and sticks or whatever that fall down, creates, it could have, a foot or more of burnable material on the ground, and it doesn't seem like it when you walk through the woods, but once it starts to burn, it burns underground.
Oh,
And
yes.
it's very hard to extinguish. So
Yeah, because it's just layer upon layer.
it's
upon
layer upon layer of old leaves and sticks and twigs. And
Yeah. So I'm going to segue into there's controlled burning. Is that something that's done in Nashua? I know in Hollis, like where I live, that there is some controlled burning and you need a permit for that if you're going to be burning like, not debris, but like branches and stuff
for
like
brush
that.
burning, you
For
mean.
brush burning.
it is permit required in Nashua for all outdoor burning.
Okay.
For campfires or for brush piles, it doesn't matter.
Okay, so either or, because we
And
were
it's a
going to talk
case
about
by case
bonfires.
basis. Yeah, if you wanted to have a cooking fire or a small campfire at your house, you can go on to National Fire website and apply for a permit online. The permits are free; they don't cost anything. But we do review the size of the area. There's distance requirements as to how far from a structure your fire pit can be, based on the size of the fire pit. As far as burning brush in the city, We prefer that people don't. You can get a permit for it. It's a single-day permit only. So it would have to come out every time you want to burn a pile of brush. And the piles have to be manageable. They can't be oversized.
Yeah, and I think in Nashua they do like leaf pickup and that kind of thing, so
Yes.
you probably don't need to do that as much as the people that live in the boondocks.
No, we tend to get it with, on the edges of the city where it's more rural. They have a lot of debris that they want to get rid of, and sometimes we'll let them burn, and other times it's just way too big of a pile. It's not manageable, and it's faster to have somebody come in and take it off site than it is to sit there and burn it for that amount of time.
Yeah, so when in doubt, please
Reach
go
out
online and
reach
go
out to Nashua Fire. Yep.
Yeah, because there are resources out there. You don't have to do this alone. And the last thing you want to do is burn your brush and then create a larger fire somewhere else. So.
No, because you are liable if you create a fire off your property from your fire.
Right. So another good reason to not to take matters into your own hands. Get some advice. These are trained professionals. They know how to look. So you said you want to keep a distance, obviously, from, you're picking your site carefully for the bonfires, for the brush burning. I read something like stand back from the fire. I mean, this seems like common sense to me, but they get really hot really fast. We don't want to have any, burns from that.
Yep, they have to be tended at all times. A campfire up to 2 feet in diameter has to be a minimum of 25 feet from a structure.
Okay.
And if it's up to 4 feet around, it has to be 50 feet from a structure. So when you're talking in the city here, within the city limits,
There aren't too many places you can do that.
especially downtown, there's not a lot of places you can meet those minimum requirements. And those are state requirements, not just Nashua.
I have a little bit more space, but I don't even know if I could meet those requirements.
Yeah, some places it just barely.
Yeah. So be careful, like just, if you're doing that. And keep water nearby.
Yeah, you have to have a water source, yes.
Okay. And then when done, you want to make sure it's out.
Has to be completely extinguished when you're done. The commercial fire pits that you can buy, a lot of them have a cover so that keeps the rain out for when you're not using it, but you can also just put that cover on to make sure it's completely extinguished.
That'll snuff it out. Yeah, I've seen that a lot lately. People are just choosing to have that little contained fire pit. You don't need a permit for that, do you?
Yes, you do.
You do?
Any outdoor burning, unless it's propane.
Okay.
If you had a campfire pit that had a propane fire,
And if you
That's
had
what
like
I
a
use in my
copper
house.
pot, do you just get a permit for the summer, or how does that work?
yep, you can go on to our website and apply for a permit. The up to 2 feet in diameter is just a campfire cooking fire. It's a seasonal, we call it.
Okay.
It's good for the whole year until December 31st. And then you have to reapply to renew it again next year.
Okay, well
But
that's
again,
good to know.
those are free. There's no cost to it. It's just a matter of getting the permit through. Once the permit's approved, it goes through dispatch, and they send out emails when there's no burning allowed. For those, once we get into drought conditions and the state says no burning allowed,
Oh, okay.
they reach out and notify everyone.
Yeah. So those are very big right now. So that's good. It's a good point that, like, I was at a graduation event last week, and they had a fire pit, and it was nice. It was on cement, but I didn't think anything of it. But if they had been in Nashua, they would have had to have a permit to use that. So that's good to know. So last but certainly not least, we are entering fireworks season. We're probably already in fireworks season. So we do want to address a little bit about fireworks, especially before the 4th of July holiday. So I know that from what we discussed and from looking online that there is an ordinance in the city of Nashua and that fireworks are not permitted.
Correct.
How is that obeyed? I mean, do you see, is this something that?
No, there's plenty of fireworks that is shot off in the city of Nashua. You're also liable if you start a fire off your property with fireworks. And a lot of those fireworks that they sell are aerial devices, and they shoot in unknown directions. And they can start fires very easily, either in the woods or on a structure somewhere. So because we're such a dense population in the city, there's an ordinance that says they're not allowed. Come to Holman Stadium for the 4th of July. We're actually going to have fireworks this year.
Yeah, that's my last slide here today.
Yes,
so
we're actually
nice
going to have
segue.
fireworks.
So we do have a slide that's just fireworks are dangerous to people and pets. You need to know how to use them properly. Best way to stay safe is to attend a fireworks display. Let the professionals do it. We don't want people to get burned and that kind of thing. Even the sparklers. I was reading up about sparklers. They
Yeah,
get to
sparklers
extremely
seem like-
high heat.
They seem like they're very safe and fun. I know when I was a kid, we always twirled them around in the air, but the actual burning phosphorus at the end of a sparkler is 1,200 degrees,
That's incredible.
which is way hotter than even a campfire.
Right. And that could really give you a really significant burn if
Yes.
you're touching that. Right. So we hate to be the killjoys, but we're going to ask you to stay safe. 4th of July is at Holman Stadium. Doors are going to be opening at 5 o'clock for those that are interested in fireworks. There are going to be food trucks this year, and there are a Hall of Fame presentation at 8 p.m. So it's going to be not just fireworks, but stuff to do with your family. And we want to wish everyone a happy and safe 4th of July, and to, again, refrain, and a happy and safe, healthy summer as we go forward. We'll be broadcasting this for a week or two so that people can really hopefully absorb some of this fire safety stuff and get their permits for their backyard fires. And we thank you for taking time out of your busy day and away from all those inspections for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Sure. And thank you all for joining us for Public Health Matters. And we'll see you in a few weeks.